vamos seguir, pois nós temos agora um vídeo que foi enviado aqui pelo Iago. O Iago Carvalho mandou aqui pra gente. Como é Breath of the Wild pra quem não joga videogames? É um vídeo aqui que foi lançado inclusive há 5 anos atrás, então ainda não tinha o nosso Tears of the Kingdom. Então vamos ver a opinião. Uma galera que pegou o Breath... E eu vi muita gente, tá? Que jogou o Breath of the Wild, assim, que não joga videogame. E pegou aqui o Breath. O vídeo aqui vem do Rasputin. Vamos dar uma olhada.
Over this past year, I had my wife, more lovingly known as the lady I live with, play a handful of video games in the hope that I might learn more about what games are like for people who don't really play them. This informal experiment taught me a lot about some of the barriers that exist for inexperienced players. Things that have almost become second nature to me proved far more difficult for her. She struggled with controls, especially when operating in a 3D space.
Porra, meu amigo. Mas também, pô, tua mulher não joga videogame. Aí, eu não sei se foi isso, cara, mas tu bota um Souls pra ela jogar também, aí tu tá querendo pedir divórcio, né?
She misunderstood signals and gameplay mechanics, causing her to spend far more time on certain sections than she needed to, and she often found herself disappointed by the limitations of games because they kept her from approaching challenges in her own way. Watching her play through these titles got me to view them through a different lens. I started to pick up on small successes and failures in the design of each game that I hadn't noticed before. There are many tiny aspects of games that more experienced players will most likely never pay any mind to, but for those without a solid base of gaming knowledge, these little things can drastically affect their approach. And after finishing that first experiment, I wanted to see what I could learn about other games.
Sabe uma coisa que é normal pra gente às vezes? Eu tava vendo isso com a filha do Hades. A filha do Hades ainda joga videogame, né? Mas ela foi pegar tipo um jogo antigo. Ela tava lá na Retrocon. Ela foi fazer alguma coisa que ela não tava sacando. É uma mecânica de pulo. Exatamente, porque o jogo que ela jogava não tinha muito numa plataforma 2D. Então é interessante que às vezes algumas coisas pra gente são um cenário bem diferente, né? Uma criança, mas também é uma pessoa mais velha. Mas tem muita coisa que pra gente já é claro. Não precisa me falar que tem esse ponto do mapa, ele é tal coisa. Esse é main quest, side quest. Eu sei o que é, consigo diferenciar do negócio, mas às vezes, tipo assim, tem coisas que tem que explicar realmente para as pessoas que nunca jogaram. Muita gente reclama aquela tinta amarela, tá ligado? Que é uma coisa até a mais do que videogame, né? Mais uma coisa que ela é visual por conta do realismo que nós temos hoje, né? Tem muito jogo que não deixa você subir em todos os lugares, então o negócio amarelo ele te destaca, né? A tinta amarela te destaca no que você consegue subir ou não. Pra ser essa referência visual, né?
By watching
A
her play
infame
them.
tinta
So based
amarela,
on
ela
the
sempre aparece, né?
recommendations of many of those who watched the first video on this subject, along with my own personal curiosity
A
about how
tinta
she would
amarela a gente
approach
já
my
vê, já
current
sabe, dá pra
favorite
subir.
game, I had her
Dá pra
play
subir.
Breath of the Wild. It's well documented that this title supports player expression in a way few games do. And given that most of the games she played last time had introductions that were on the more scripted side of things, I wanted to see how Breath of the Wild held up for someone with little gaming experience. For this informal experiment, I had her play through the opening section of the game. The Great Plateau provides a fair amount of freedom for players to interact with the various systems and game mechanics of Breath of the Wild while still having a pretty clear and immediate objective for them to complete. While I considered having her use the Pro HUD, I ended up deciding against it because I wanted her to have a
Minha mulher não joga videogame. Vou botar ela pra jogar Souls. Eu quase botei ela pra jogar o Breath of the Wild com HUD Pro, pra ela não entender porra nenhuma que tá acontecendo. Esse cara quer divorciar, só que ele não tá sabendo falar, pô. Não é possível. Caralho, vai pra quê?
a few more tools at her disposal. She didn't really pay attention to anything on the HUD though, so it is what it is. I also opted to be a little more helpful this time around. In the last one, I sat back as a silent observer in an effort to not influence her approach with any of the games. And as you may know, or could probably assume, it went great. For this, I provided refreshers on game mechanics and controls when she asked for them, but I didn't tell her where she should go or how to approach situations. All in all, this served as a way to keep things a little less overwhelming, allowing her to better engage with the game itself. So this is how it went.
Outro experimento informal. Ele tá dormindo no sofá desde então.
Given that video games are still pretty new to her, my wife had a fair bit of trouble getting used to the controls. In a high-stress
Já vou
situation...
parar aqui que eu vou ter que dar uma moralzinha pra tua esposa, tá? Porque o controle do Zelda, ele não é muito convencional de jogos de aventura e RPG. Ele tem um layout um pouquinho diferente. O pulo não é tipo no A, tá ligado? No B, né? No caso do controle da Nintendo, né? Que fica aqui embaixo, né? Eu tô maluco. Deixa eu ver. Então, tipo assim, o controle do Breath of the Wild, ele é meio esquisito mesmo. O layout de botão. Então, eu vou passar um pano aqui pra tua esposa passar perrengue no começo.
She frequently found herself pressing the wrong buttons and canceling out of actions, which soured a few moments where she almost did something really cool. She also continued her long-standing battle against her greatest video game foe, the camera. Whether it came from her running too close to a wall and having the camera go
Isso é
inside
uma
of
coisa
Link, or her
constante pra
not
quem não
feeling
joga videogame
comfortable with
mesmo.
moving and
Ajustar a
adjusting
câmera
the
com o
camera at the
analógico
same
direito.
time, she ended up not seeing a handful of things that could have assisted her. With all of that said, Breath of the Wild does include a few small touches that ended up helping her a fair bit when trying to figure out the controls. For example, whenever a button prompt comes up in the game, instead of just showing which one needs to be pressed, it shows where it is in relation to the other buttons. This may seem like an insignificant detail, but it led her to look down at the controller far less often. By showing her
legal,
where
eu
a
não tinha
button
pensado
was
nisso
instead of just
na
what the
utilidade.
button was, it became easier for her to find it by feel. Another thing that helped her a lot was the lock-on feature. Regardless of whether or not enemies are around,
O
pressing the
lendário
lock-on button
Zelok,
causes the
desde
camera to center
Ocarina.
behind Link, so she got in the habit of constantly using it to keep the camera in place.
Revolucionária
While it limited
mecânica.
her ability to survey the wider landscape, it allowed her to keep her perspective under control. I assume that the designers didn't intend for players to use the lock-on feature in the way that she did, but it ended up making things far more manageable for her. I love the idea that mechanics that seem to have a single function can be manipulated by players of varying skill levels to have it benefit them most. She did continue to try to get used to controlling the camera with the joystick, but she kept saying that it didn't feel intuitive. Like most other modern games, Breath of the Wild's default camera settings are standard controls. So to look to the right, the player presses right on the joystick. Her instincts were the opposite though, and I found that intriguing. Inverted controls used to be the default setting in a lot of games, and a fair amount of people still hold on to that preference. But my wife didn't have any exposure to those titles. Obviously, it is possible that her brain is just wired in a way where inverted controls make more
Valeu,
sense.
Vaporeon.
Quadrado bate, X pula, círculo esquiza e triângulo é menu habilidade. É clássico.
Esse é o clássico, né? O quadrado bater é o clássico. Mas o do Breath, mano... Pô, deixa eu ver como é que ele era aqui. Eu já esqueci, cara. Faz tempo que eu não jogo. Acho que tá aberto aqui. Tava no da... Olha, e tá inclusive no menu do jogo. Perfeito aqui pra gente, ó. Que legal, né? Tá focando em tudo, menos aqui no botão. Foda-se, eu vou ler pra vocês. Aqui, o que seria o bolinha, né? Eu vou falar em termos PlayStation. O bolinha pula. Não, o bolinha é o action. O A guarda. O triângulo pula. E aí que seria quadrado ataca. O quadrado ataca tem que ser o canônico. O quadrado ataca tem que ser o canônico. Mas, pô, tu botar o pulo no triângulo é brincadeira. Convenhamos. É uma parada inusitada, ninguém faz isso.
But it got me wondering what outside factors may have influenced the preference.
O
I
X
can't
do
be
que? O X do
100%
PlayStation é de
sure, but my
guardar.
best
Put away,
guess
você
is that
guarda
it
as
stems
coisas.
from her being used to inverted scrolling on her phone, as most touchscreens have that as the default setting. Given her lack of experience with camera controls in games, it makes sense that she would transfer this knowledge over. As a side note, on the topic of cell phone use possibly influencing her view of the game, there was a moment very early on, just before she exited the Shrine of Resurrection, where a text box came up that said authenticating. And because she is so used to seeing this sort of update on her phone, she waited for about 30 seconds before realizing that it wasn't actually doing anything and she could just press A to move on.
Tadinha, cara. Coitada. É porque ela não tá acostumada com videogame. A gente tem que pensar nisso, mas não deixa de ser engraçado. Mas é porque tinha uma setinha aqui. Essa setinha, pra quem joga videogame, sabe que é a setinha de apertar botão pra seguir na frente, né? Mas como ela não joga, tadinha, ela ficou presa ali, velho. Esperando.
Why is this tape? Oh.
Anyway, once she made the switch to inverted controls, she began implementing the right analog stick more often, and by the end of the tutorial, she had a pretty good grasp over controlling the camera. I imagine she would have gotten better at this by playing any third-person game long enough, but I do think that her being able to use the lock-on feature to recenter the camera, along with there being so much open space to move around in, made it easier for her to figure things out. In general, Breath of the Wild's open approach to world design helped her overcome a few things that she struggled with while playing games in the past, the most notable being
navegação e exploração.
When it comes to games, and honestly life in general, my wife prefers to have a clear objective and destination in mind. So for the most part, she didn't purposefully stray off of the path in order to explore the various nooks and crannies of the Great Plateau. This threw me off a bit because when I played the game for the first time, I constantly felt pulled to check out places other than the destination the game set for me. Looking back though, a lot of the things that drew my attention only did so because of my familiarity with the other games. For example, seeing the remains of what looks to be the Temple of Time is sure to intrigue fans of the series, leading them to want to check it out. However, without the prior knowledge of its importance, she didn't feel the urge to explore it. And because the game was telling her to go somewhere else, that's where she went. All in all, she did a pretty solid job navigating where to go. Breath of the Wild does...
porque ali ele teve contexto textual, né, que a gente sabe que a gente joga videogame também, né? Tipo, se o NPC tá falando uma coisa, é porque alguém que escreveu o roteiro, ele quer que você saiba disso. Então, tipo, ele falou assim, tá vendo aquele lugar ali? Era um templo. Muita coisa aconteceu lá, ele é de muita importância. Você não tá falando isso à toa, você quer que eu vá lá. Então, tipo assim, eu penso muito nisso. Você falou essa coisinha ali, eu vou dar uma investigada. Aí pra ela, ela fala assim, não é o ponto do mapa, não é o objetivo, eu não vou pra lá. Né? É interessante ver como é que pega diferente aqui. Fiz a mesma coisa com a Sofia, visitando ela no mundo aberto com o Tears of the Kingdom, foi bem intuitivo, olha aí. Então ela já pegou rápido. A Sofia, ela costumava jogar jogo, eu não cheguei a perguntar pra ela se ela tem esse histórico gamer.
Doesn't fill its map with too much information, only including markers for the main objective and
the
locations of shrines and towers that the player has already found.
Depois eles adicionaram, né, pra você poder trocar o botão, mas eu falei, cara, já joguei o jogo todo com a esquiva no R1, agora minha mente acostumou. Agora que eu boto Final Fantasy XVI, se não desviar com R1, eu vou achar estranho, né? Mas é criminoso o R1 na esquiva mesmo.
This leads to a lot less clutter than the maps and mini-maps of many other open-world games. The only time that she really struggled with knowing where to go was when she had to pin the various shrines across the Great Plateau. She kept trying to mark towers and shrines that were inaccessible without the paraglider. Ultimately, this is a small issue, but I do think it is one of the few failings of Breath of the Wild's tutorial. It is hard to grasp the size of the Great Plateau on a first playthrough, especially for someone who is still trying to get used to exploring a 3D space. And it can cause players to have to go through a fair bit of trial and error before getting it right. I wouldn't be surprised if more experienced players ran into this issue as well. It probably would have been a better choice to only have the shrines of the Great Plateau appear during this section as to cut down on confusion. Despite this, she did like being the one to place the pins of where to go because it gave her a better idea of what she would be in for.
Sabe o que isso tá me dando uma parada, um insight? Eu não sei como é que a galera testa essas coisas no mundo dos jogos, dos videojogos, né, como diz o Hades. Mas, mano, um playtest com alguém que nunca jogou o jogo talvez seja interessante pra manjar de acessibilidade, né? E, tipo, às vezes tem coisas que pra gente é super óbvio. Mas a pessoa, ela vai jogar o jogo pela primeira vez, assim, é um jogo que ela não costuma jogar videogame. Pra essa pessoa pode parecer a coisa mais confusa do universo. Então, talvez, eu não sei se isso é comum, ter playtests com pessoas que não jogam jogos, mas é uma coisa que ficarei em mente se algum dia eu desenvolver um jogo. Ela não é acostumada a jogar esse tipo de jogo, ela joga FPS. Sim, pelo menos ela tem uma familiaridade, pelo menos, né, com o jogo.
Or at each of the locations. After setting the markers, she headed from point to point and, to my dismay, even used fast travel to get places more efficiently. My favorite stretch of her playthrough, though, came from the one time she did stray away from the main path. Just after getting the first objective to head to the marker on the Sheikah Slate, she got into a fight with a Bokoblin. All she had on her was a stick, and it promptly broke. Panicked, she ran away. Sort of.
I'm just gonna just go like this the whole way.
There are a lot of ways a first encounter can
Tadinha.
go, but it does seem like the game tries to set the player up to learn its core combat loop by having them start with a stick. That loop being breaking a weapon on an enemy, picking up the weapon that they dropped after getting hit, and then mercilessly killing them with it. Given that she chose to run away, she missed the most important and fun steps of this loop, leaving her weaponless and far away from finding a new one without conflict. As she approached her destination, she saw a bokoblin blocking the path. Not wanting to get killed by it, she went out searching for a new weapon. I assumed she'd head back to the starting area to search for one, but because the only weapon she had found at that point was a stick, she figured that the forest would be the best place to find more. After searching for a while, she came across one, but decided to keep exploring in order to find a more reliable weapon. While heading through the forest, she narrowly avoided a few dangerous encounters before eventually coming up to a small fire by a cliffside with 2 rocks sitting at the edge. Just to see what would happen, she pushed one, causing it to fall, and a moment later she heard the sound of bokoblins being splattered.
It's like really violent.
For good measure, she pushed down the
tadinha,
other
ela não tá
one as
conseguindo
well.
olhar.
Knowing that the bokoblins she had seen so far all had weapons, she decided to head down to the camp to see if they had dropped any. When she got down there, she fought the single bokoblin left alive, stole its bow, somewhat clumsily killed it, and then looted the camp. At this point, she felt confident in her abilities and armed enough to take out the bokoblin by the tower. There were certainly easier and more efficient ways for her to get a suitable weapon, but the approach she ended up taking led to an exciting and memorable sequence that made her feel resourceful and clever. I think my favorite thing about her little excursion is that it all started from her simply not noticing the weapons placed on the starting path. Her mistake led to a major success where she ended up being rewarded with a weapon far more valuable than a wood-cutting axe. And I can almost guarantee that she wouldn't have even gone in this direction had she just found a weapon lying around. And this really gets to the heart of arguably Breath of the Wild's greatest strength. It lets players do
coisas certas de maneira errada. Pô, isso é uma coisa que o Breath of the Wild realmente...
Throughout the playthrough, my wife almost
Deixa de
never found
fazer
herself
direto.
feeling stuck, and that is largely in part to Breath of the
monte de
Wild being
shrine já
designed
completei
in a way
pensando,
where there are
nem
many
fudendo que eles
solutions to
pensaram
any
que
given problem,
resolveria assim.
even when that problem is one created by the player. A great example of this happened when she was trying to get to the first shrine. She walked toward it and saw a pond in the way. Thinking she wouldn't have enough stamina to swim across and climb up the other side, she looked for a different path. Given that this happened when she was still very uncomfortable with the camera controls, instead of looking to the left where she would have found a clear and easy way around, she went in the direction the camera was facing. In most games, her trying to take a path like this would lead to running into a wall for a while. But because Link can climb almost everything, it became a viable route. She scaled the broken wall, jumped over what she thought was a treacherous gap, but in reality only would have been a small fall, and climbed down the other side. Instead of leading to a moment of frustration or embarrassment for hitting a boundary, it led to one of discovery and excitement as she did something that felt adventurous. While the intended path was surely to just walk around the water, doing it in an unintended way felt more rewarding. A similar thing happened when she was heading to the shrine near the old man's shack. The intended path for this section seems to be talking to the old man who tells the player to chop down a tree in order to create a bridge to the other side. My wife walked up to this area and didn't talk to the old man. Afterwards, she told me it was because she had just spoken with him at the tower and assumed he had nothing new to say. This felt incredibly strange to me because I've gotten into the habit of talking to pretty much every character I see when playing a game. I've been conditioned to assume that they'll offer some sort of helpful information on how to progress through certain sections. But as that idea has not been drilled into her head from years of playing video games, she opted to figure it out on her own. So instead, she took out a nearby camp of bokoblins and tried climbing from the edge of their camp to the cliff across. To be honest, I didn't know this approach was possible. I always thought it was too far of a climb and that the game was funneling players into learning the tree chopping mechanic. What's interesting is that the way she did it gave a far more useful lesson than the one I assumed the game was trying to teach. I can't really think of another time outside of the Great Plateau where I needed to chop down a tree to get somewhere, but I can think of hundreds of times where I had to find creative approaches to climb to a destination. So again, despite not noticing the path the game seemed to be suggesting, she found her own way that helped her develop a better understanding of stamina and climbing management. Ever since playing Breath of the Wild for the first time, I've been enamored with the amount of solutions the game
Pô, mas
allows.
te falar, essa parada é boba, né? De você cortar a madeira pra poder fazer uma ponte, né? Mas, cara, foi nesse momento... Não, foi vários momentos, mas esse foi um dos momentos que me conquistou desse jogo. Eu falei assim, caralho! Pô, a gente tá aqui... Porque, tipo assim, muito da vegetação do cenário, principalmente em coisas grandes, tipo árvores, assim, a gente tá condicionado a achar que tá ali e ele não é interativo, né? E quando você chega, você quebra qualquer árvore de qualquer lado e ela vai cair e ela faz uma ponte pra você passar, e eu falei assim, que jogo foda.
for any given problem. It truly is a monumental achievement in terms of player expression. However, I've always viewed this from the perspective of someone who sees an obstacle in the game and actively decides which approach would be most effective or interesting. After watching my wife play, I now appreciate it in a new light. By casting a wide net of options, it not only allows experienced players the ability to experiment with different strategies, but it also almost guarantees that less experienced players will find at least one thing that they can grab a hold of to complete challenges. Obviously, there are still some elements that players of all skill levels will get hung up on, but for the most part, Breath of the Wild's versatile game mechanics mixed with its clever and detailed world design leads to an experience that is challenging yet approachable. It makes players feel like geniuses for overcoming basic obstacles, and that is extremely empowering, especially to those who aren't used to feeling good at video games. It helped her build confidence, and no game had really done that for her before.
I won.
No.
Por fim, novamente.
After she glided away from the Great Plateau, I asked her what she thought of her time with the game. And the first thing she noted was that playing Breath of the Wild felt oddly calming. The combination of the beautiful landscape and the wide open space to move around in made it a place she enjoyed experiencing. She felt that there was time to breathe between the more intense moments. With the last experiment, most of the sections she played were filled with constant danger and tension. And while the onslaught of action was exciting in some ways, it was exhausting in others. With Breath of the Wild, while danger was still present, she had more options with how she engaged with various conflicts. She could attack from a distance with a bow, push a boulder on unsuspecting enemies, climb out of reach, or simply just run away. Also, moving out of one dangerous situation did not automatically mean moving into another, and I think having those breaks helped her a fair bit with feeling comfortable while playing. The majority of things that frustrated her in the games I had her play in the past didn't really come up in Breath of the Wild. She didn't ask questions like, why isn't this working? Because almost everything she tried worked. To be honest, I'm surprised how friendly this game is to inexperienced players. It provides a challenging experience that doesn't force them into situations that may be out of their depth, and I think that goes a long way. In my last video on this, I ended it by saying that if you are ever in a situation where someone in your life who doesn't play games asks if they can try one, you should do what you can to help them understand it. You should teach them how to read it. I still very much think this is true, and it'd be wrong of me to not acknowledge
eu quero jogar esse jogo aí. Assim, velho, vai se fuder, não joga essa porra não. Peraí, pô.
Part of why things went more smoothly this time around had to do with me offering some assistance. With that said, while helping someone figure out how to play a game can go a long way, there is something deeply empowering for inexperienced players when a game makes them feel like they're teaching themselves.
Cool. Legal. Mano, legal.
And while we're on the topic of getting better at things you might be bad at, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. As you may know, Skillshare is an online community centered around learning. It provides thousands of classes on subjects that range from graphic design to productivity to lifestyle.
O Ades já colocou a mulher dele pra jogar Soul. O Ades põe a filha pra farmar. Cara, eu já falei com o Ades, mano. O Ades, ele usa muito a família dele pra poder gerar conteúdo, né? É sensacional. Um dos vídeos mais engraçados que eu já vi foi ele assim, economizando pra poder comprar uma 5080, né? E aí ele bota a mulher, a filha dele pra fora de casa, dá um tchau e fecha a porta. Porra, cara. Mas velho. Daqui a pouco, eu não sei se a Bia joga videogame. Sinceramente, não sei. Mas a Lara já platinou o jogo da Peppa Pig, tá? É a Lara platinadora, parceiro. Então daqui a pouco acho que o Ades tá fazendo um conteúdo legal com ela aí também. Botei minha filha pra jogar Dark Souls. Eu acho que seria um ótimo conteúdo. Minha filha ela tá com quanto? 5 anos? Botei minha filha de 5 anos pra jogar Dark Souls. Seria um vídeo legal de fazer.
With that, I hope you have a great day and or night, and I'll see you in the next one.
Mas esse foi o vídeo aí, rapaziada. Cara, um vídeo muito interessante, viu? É legal a gente pensar na perspectiva de quem nunca jogou o jogo, vai pegar um jogo, pô, muito grande, assim, tipo um Breath of the Wild, com um monte de coisa pra fazer, assim. E é uma perspectiva meio que única, né? Que a gente tá sempre aqui na nossa bolha, a gente tá sempre jogando, a gente tá sempre querendo mais coisas pra gente poder fazer, mais coisas inovadoras, né, e tal. Então é interessante quando vem essa outra perspectiva. O Watson não põe a filha pra falar Bitcoin porque ele ainda não sabe contar direito, que ela ainda não sabe contar direito. Pô, mano, se fosse na época dos Dos NFT, tu lembra que a gente tinha aqueles joguinhos NFT ruim pra caraca? Nossa, você pode ter certeza que a Lara ia ter feito o Hades ficar rico, tá? Mas filha, joga esse joguinho aqui pra mim. E vai, e farma o NFT. O Hades tá rico hoje. Ainda tem por aí? Ainda tem. Mas que toda hora fica... Tem um Epic Ballad. Epic Ballad toda hora fica tentando fazer uma publi aqui. Fala assim, pô... vocês parecem ser gente fina, mas eu não vou fazer publi de jogo NFT. Nada contra quem faz, mas assim, pô, não vou fazer. Eu falei mal de NFT. Pessoal, eu que taco o pau, fiz uns 30 vídeos tacando pau em NFT. Joga Epic Ballad aí. Tá ligado? Pô, ia ser hipócrita da minha parte. Mas ainda tem alguns. A Ubisoft lançou NFT recentemente. Que, pô, ainda bem que nem fiquei sabendo, mano. Melhor a gente nem entrar nisso daí. Nossa, lembra quando a Square queria investir... Nossa, só decisão bosta da Square, né? E queria investir pesado em NFT. Lembra dessa época horrorosa? Aí fingiram que nunca mais... Fingiram que não falaram isso, né? Nunca mais falaram nada. Foda, pai. Dinheiro na mão, calcinha no chão? Tá louco. Não, pera aí. A gente traça um limite. NFT de Parasite. Nossa! Como é que era? O negócio era... Puta, era o nome... Era um nome que, tipo assim, você via aí... Parasite Eve. Vai ser. E aí foi aquele negócio de coleção. Nossa, NFT. Ah! Que época triste! Simbiose. Simbiogênese, Iago, lembrei. Puta que pariu, Simbiogênese foi uma das coisas mais broxantes da história. Puta que pariu, meu amigo. O que foi o Simbiogênesis, cara? Nossa, eu lembro que eu fiz o vídeo pau duraço. Tava assim, puta, Parasite Eve vai voltar. Eles não podem usar o nome Parasite Eve porque é da menina que fez o livro e tal, esse Paraná. Por isso que estão botando Simbiogênesis. E a gente começando a teorizar pra caralho.